Okay, so we're on for tonight, and the program for this evening is Sleep Easy. And I was inspired last month or the month before, I can't remember. I was reading an article. It was like in Better Homes and Gardens or something, and it was on the elevation in the number of in the United States in the number of sleeping pill prescription level, heavy duty prescription level sleeping pill growth in the United States, and it was this startling statistic. Well, it's like a 30% increase, which is amazing. We're talking millions of prescriptions. In 2011, there were 60 million sleeping pill subscriptions written. This is just in 2011. Written in the United States, just the United States. That was a 30% increase over 2006. So in 5 years, it jumped to that level. There was a recent study done that just in the last year, where a survey done, and they found that 40 in this particular survey. Again, it's probably numbers are numbers. Lots of different surveys can show lots of different things, but there's a lot of different reports that are bringing in numbers like this. But this particular report said that at this particular point in time, 40% of Americans are experiencing mild to severe sleep deprivation. That's pretty amazing. And most of these people who are experiencing sleep deprivation are using some form of sleeping aid. Many are using prescription level drugs to help themselves go to sleep. Others are using things like melatonin, over-the-counter drugstore stuff that anybody can buy. There's gazillions of relaxing type remedies on the market right now. So anything that will relax a person, help lull them off to sleep. And of course, alcohol. Alcohol for a long, long time, and new studies haven't even been done on that. Other than one interesting one I read was a study was done, and having a nightcap every night to kind of relax yourself and help you kick yourself off to sleep is actually very harmful. And there's all kinds of side effects of that it's best not to have a nightcap to help yourself go to sleep, to not have that glass of wine to kind of relax you through that last television show, and then you go to bed and conk out. There's just too many side effects. But a poll was done and in America, and 58%. So this is almost 60% of the people polled in this study had no idea, none, that there were any type of negative side effects of having a nightcap, that could have any kind of negative effect on you. But in fact, it does have a negative effect on you. One of the things that alcohol does, if you have it late at night like that, to where you're slightly drowsy from the alcohol when you go to bed, is that it inhibits REM sleep, which is so important. That's considered healthy sleep. It lightens the sleep stages that the person is able to get into. And the other thing that happens, that's the most important thing that happens, but people tend to, not all people will do this, but many people tend to need more and more and more and more alcohol in order to get the same effect, in order to get the same knockout result from the alcohol. But mainly it inhibits REM sleep, and so the person is not getting healthy sleep. It also amplifies, if there are pre-existing sleep disorders, it will amplify those disorders, and it will accelerate the development of those deeper sleep disorders, those deeper problems. In the UK, just as early as I think it was something like March not March, because we're not even at March. It was just the end of last year. It said that a big article in the Daily News in the UK was that Britons are addicted to sleeping pills. So many people in Britain are taking sleeping pills that it's considered the major addiction in Britain right now, because so many people are doing it. 1/3, I read in Psychology Today, this was a recent article, 1/3 of all Britons complain of insomnia, and half of those that complained about it in the study they did are taking prescription drugs that their doctors don't even know that they're taking. They're getting them illegally and taking them. So, I mean, it's just totally out of control. So tonight we're going to talk about, I'm not a stranger to sleep problems. I have, starting almost 20, about 20 years ago, 18 years ago, certainly it really became evident. 15 years became severe. I started having very significant sleep problems after I moved to Sedona. Now, prior to the point that I moved to Sedona, I used to sleep so soundly and so deeply. I had talk about dreaming. I had lucid dreams all the time. That was like my normal dream state. My family was always so worried about how deeply that I slept and how soundly that I slept that I just nothing fazed me. That they wondered if there ever was a fire or anything, would I ever wake up? Would I ever be able to get out? So there was this ongoing kind of lighthearted concern about me and my sleep patterns. But I just loved sleeping. It was one of my favorite things, and I could do it well, and it was very, very healthy sleep, where I'm sure I was getting into long periods of REM sleep. It was wonderful. I moved to Sedona. I stopped. My sleep was the very first thing that got disrupted. I started being heavily influenced mainly by radio wave frequencies that were coming in from two different radio towers in the radio broadcast stations in the Sedona area, and they were creating some kind of interference pattern in my house. So it was creating kind of like mutant waves in my house. There was that. There was all kinds of geopathic stuff, natural energy occurring in the house. Basically, the house that I bought, as many of you know the story, was energetically. It's a delightful house now. It's that little wonderful vacation rental that I talk about all the time. And it was the Senzar Learning Center for a number of years. But when I first bought it, it was like the house from hell. I mean, everything was wrong with it. And the first thing that happened when I got exposed to all those energies, energetically, everything was wrong with it, is that I developed severe sleep disorder and severe electrostress, and was another thing that happened, but that was just a symptom of the electrostress and the geopathic stress. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that because my sleep patterns for the first time in my life got disrupted, and they were severely disrupted to the point that I went for probably 3-4 years or longer with surviving. I was severely sleep deprived. I was surviving on probably 3 hours of sleep a night, and that was not restful sleep. And I didn't have chronic fatigue or anything like that, which is amazing because luckily I have so much energy. I could survive something like that, but I was not getting very much sleep, and I was getting crankier and crankier and crankier and crankier. As a byproduct of that, I learned a lot about many of the unconventional. You can read all kinds of articles on the internet. Many doctors are trying to solve this problem. Why aren't Americans sleeping? Why aren't Brits sleeping? And they're saying, largely it's because they're overengaged, they're working too hard, they're not slowing down their minds. Common sense things. But I'm going to tell you that it's way beyond the common sense things. There's a ton of subtle energy stuff going on in environments that has been elevated exponentially in the last 15 to 20 years since I've been tracking what causes sleep disorders. And so I'm going to share the more unconventional stuff with you and some conventional insights too of things you can do if you do have any kind of problem sleeping or sleeping well without some kind of aid, like a little glass of wine or a beer before an hour before you go to bed, something like that. Or you are taking some kind of relaxing herb or medication. And it's not that some of the natural remedies, it's not that they're are they as harmful as, say, prescription level sleeping pills? No, they are not as harmful as prescription level sleeping pills, which, by the way, with prescription level pills, they're now finding that they've been startled because all these scientific reports, because this has now been studied intensely, are coming in. They're showing a 5-fold increase in early death rates from people who use sleeping pills for even a few years. So it increases in cancer. I found a website that had listed 203 side effects of prescription level sleeping pills. It's called, I wrote it down for you guys, so if you wanted to, you could look it up. It was very interesting. Do I have it? Well, never mind. It's 'cause it's I can't find it. Just put in 200. Yeah, you can pull it up with this search term. 203 side effects of prescription level sleeping pills, and just look at this list. It's just amazing. But cancer, cardiovascular disease, and accidents, death by accident, like by falling down, sleepwalking, and getting into some kind of weird trouble. Having an accident, basically. It's huge growth levels in that. But the milder stuff, someone will say, well, what's the big deal about doing something like taking, like melatonin at night before I go to sleep? The big deal is if you're needing to do that, and you're needing to do that all the time, there's some other kind of problem going on that you're masking that could be creating a much bigger problem for you than you can't easily fall to sleep. So the idea of becoming dependent on something like that, needing something like that, and masking problematic situations in the environment that could lead to much more severe health situations. So you want to let the red flag be raised, like I have all these years. And I've never taken sleep medication. Have I ever knocked myself out with alcohol so I could sleep? One time I did that. I stayed in a hotel that in Ireland that had very severe Wi-Fi, very, very strong Wi-Fi in the room where I was in, and I was just being fried. And I drank one of those little teeny bottles of wine to basically that I'm a lightweight. I can barely drink something like that without getting drunk. And because I don't drink very often, and I'm not very big. I mean, I'm not a very big person. And anyway, bottom line, I did do that time to I didn't actually pass out or anything, but I kind of relaxed myself to a point where I just, I was oblivious to the Wi-Fi. But as a general rule, I won't do that type of thing, because even though certain situations can still to this day get in the way of my sleep, I do all these things I'm going to talk about with you tonight are things that I personally have done and do to help myself sleep better. And still from time to time, I have sleep problems. Like last night, I had an awful night. I probably got an hour's worth of sleep last night. And it was because of the star stuff coming in. And I could feel it. And I was not able to make adjustments fast enough and thoroughly enough where I could not feel what was going on. So basically what kept me awake all night long was pain, excruciating pain. And, but that doesn't happen all the time. And I walk my talk. I do everything that I'm going to talk to you about, and it's because of years of needing to manage sleep, starting with that bizarre electrostress thing and geopathic stress reaction that I had all those years ago. Overall, I don't believe in masking unless you absolutely have to, just to knock yourself out so you can get a little bit of sleep. You need to find what the root of the problem is. You need to try to solve it. So we're going to talk more about root level stuff tonight, especially the stuff that is unseen. So what are some of those things? And I know you have your handout so you can follow along. Number one thing I'm going to recommend, and I now have seen positive results from this with literally hundreds of people. And I'd see more if I was doing more work with private clients, but hundreds of people I have seen results with what I'm going to tell you. And that's if you want to sleep like a baby, and you don't really want to sleep like a baby because they don't really sleep that well. That's a rotten term to use. You want to sleep incredibly soundly, peacefully, have healthy sleep, wake up feeling wonderfully refreshed without aches and pains. That's how you want to sleep. However many hours you want to sleep, whether that's 6 or 8, you want to be able to really have that kind of sleep. So number one in today's environment, and I am absolutely convinced it is what is behind. Yes, the busy work schedules have a little bit to do with it, but we need to face facts. There's been busy work schedules like this for now at least a couple of decades, if not longer. And so how is it just in the last 5 years we see an elevation in prescription level sleeping pills like we're seeing right now? Yes, there's more stress because of the economy. You could blame it on that and all that thing. But you know what else there is? There's rampant spread of Wi-Fi. Flat out. There is radio frequency activity that is stronger than we've ever in human form experienced. Force-fed radio frequencies at high frequencies passing through our bodies. So, and a lot of people, again, they're not as sensitive as me, so they don't fry. They're a little bit agitated. Maybe they can't sleep as easily, so they have their little little nightcap, or they notice that they're not sleeping easily for a couple of weeks, so they get an over-the-counter, herb that will help them sleep, and now they're taking the herb all the time, and what's really happening is they're agitated by radio waves, and they're not recognizing that, and that is agitating the entire body and the entire ability of the body to tend to itself appropriately. It does not surprise me, that people that are having these severe problems with sleep, where they're choosing to take sleeping pills, that they're seeing an elevation in cancer rates and all that kind of stuff. It may not have anything to do with the sleeping pills. It may have to do with the environments they're in, that the radio stuff that's causing these people not to be able to sleep. And one of the side effects is cancers, and there's studies going on that end that would substantiate that. So, but they don't compare notes for some reason. It's hysterical. Anyway, turn off the Wi-Fi, your router especially, not just your computer. You all know this drill, and other wireless and radio equipment. Now, let me give you an example of this. My neighbor next door, just horrific sleep problems. She was tossing and turning every night, barely able to get a few hours of sleep a night, and that was not restful sleep, kind of like my old days. And as soon as she told me her symptoms, I knew what was wrong, because I had been over their house. They had Wi-Fi in their house, and they have a lot of geopathic energies at their house, and they're not into any of this stuff that we're talking about tonight. But I just took her aside one day. She had developed breast cancer. She successfully went through breast cancer treatment and got that cleared up, or it looked like it was cleared up, at least up until today. But I said, she told me about her sleep problem, and that she was worried about herself because she was on the recovery end of the breast cancer, and she was so fatigued she just could not get her energy back. And she said, I need sleep. I said, I know you may think I'm a kook with a lot of this stuff, but you need to listen to me. You need to turn off the radio wave activity in your house. You flat out need to turn it off. And I mean everything. You need to turn off the Wi-Fi. You need to turn off anything else that is working with radio waves. Her husband had a background in electronics, and so they did a buy-in on this, and they turned off everything. Well, they had some very interesting things going on in their house. They had a bat. They had a problem with bats, which is very interesting, because in Senzar, the black bat is the symbol of cancer, and they had bats coming and nesting right in the roof area of their big entry to their house. So they had put up one of those bat deflectors, which basically works on radio waves. They had that direct TV thing in the house. What else did they have? Oh, they had an alarm system that was using radio frequencies. They had a lot of radio wave activity in the house. So they shut all that stuff off literally within, and they did it all in like a day or two. Within less than 3 or 4 days, that gal comes over and she tells me that she had her first sound night's sleep in the last couple of years. She hadn't slept that well, and she slept that well. Now, it could have been coincidence, but she continues to sleep well, and they continue to leave all that radio frequency stuff off. So these were very staunch non-believers in all this subtle energy, Wi-Fi stuff, all that kind of stuff, believing absolutely that, not even aware or me telling them previously, this is in all likelihood affecting you, not paying any attention to that, thinking I was a goofball. And here's the woman developing breast cancer, can't sleep, all this kind of stuff, and she can sleep immediately after she turns off all this stuff. So turn off the Wi-Fi and anything that has radio frequencies, especially high frequency radio waves that are running through the space. Your system, your body was not designed to work 24/7 with that kind of stuff going through you. It just wasn't. Turn off your cell phones and remove all cell phones from the bedroom. I say that not because of the electromagnetics of the cell phones, but of the psychological anchor to those cell phones. That's part, I think, of the unsettledness that people are feeling today, is that they never shut down their minds. Even when they turn the cell phone off, they're wondering who has called. Get the cell phone out of, and this is developed very rapidly. If you think back just 10 years ago, your behavior with phones, it wasn't like this. It wasn't where you couldn't function without knowing who was calling you that day. You weren't taking, 20 text messages a day over your little phone. And none of that was happening as just 10 years ago. You need to disconnect yourself at night, at least for 6 or 8 hours while you sleep, and that means don't even have a memory trigger in the bedroom that can make you think you need to be on, or can make you wonder, even at a subconscious level, who might be calling you. Get everything like that out of the bedroom. Physically ground yourself. Most of you live in locations where there's a tremendous amount of atmospheric radio frequency, man-made radio stuff, and there's just no way you're going to be able to get around that. That is not nearly as challenging as the close distance radio frequencies from things like Wi-Fi routers that have the little antennas. You basically have a high-powered radio station in your house with those things. If you've got a BlackBerry, you've got any kind of cell phone that is Wi-Fi enabled, or you've got one of those phones now that can create a hotspot. The phone itself can become a hotspot. That's Wi-Fi, and you can basically you've got close range radiation poisoning happening is what is occurring. The radio waves that are just coming from radio stations and your neighbors and blah 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 blah, all that is affecting you too, but it's not affecting you nearly as much as the stuff in your own house. Still, even if you were managing yourself like I'm managing myself out of necessity because of my oversensitivity to it, you're going to be exposed to the stuff from your neighbors, and you need to ground yourself. This simple thing, it's free. You just ground yourself when you know if you've got a lot of radio wave activity, or you're using a cell phone during the day, or you've been out and about, and everybody in your office has wireless computers, there's wireless internet at the office or in your home or whatever. Just at the end of the day, try to get yourself out of an intense radio frequency environment and ground yourself. Now, I know that many of you went through some of my my stuff on Are You Getting Zapped, that training. And I know in that program that I said that I thought that it was a good idea to use the grounding products that have been developed by the earthing.com. You can get them at earthing.com. I'm switching my opinion on that. There's something not right about that. And I for those of you who haven't, some of you know this. You follow my work closely enough. You watch almost every seminar, so you've heard me give these little snippets of extra information that I've changed my mind about those grounding pads. I don't think it's a good idea to be sleeping on those all the time. I do think it's a really good idea if you have a lot of blasting all day long in radio frequency rich environments, that you do something as simple as take your shoes off and walk outside on the earth, on the grass, or you go into your bathroom, provided you've got metal faucets that are hooked to metal pipes, and you put your hand on that faucet and you ground yourself for just a few minutes. So what I'm suggesting is that you do ground yourself at the end of every day, but that you don't perpetually stay in a state where you're grounding yourself constantly. I think we may need a little bit, maybe it's just those of us who are in, more sensitive vessels, maybe channeling higher light stuff, or connected to the stars, or God knows what, but report after report after report, including my own reports on my own experimentation with myself, there's something not right about grounding yourself constantly with those mats. You reach a point and it has a reverse effect, and it starts making you sick, or it starts making you have more aches or not sleeping well. So get rid of those, and you can use them periodically. Like when I go in and I do a lecture, all the lectures that I've done in the last year and a half, I've taken a grounding pad with me, and I take my shoes off, I wear cotton socks, and I stand on the grounding mat when I do the lecture, because there's so much atmospheric radiation that I can't think straight if I'm not grounding myself out through the entire lecture. So for something like that, it works really well, but overall, I say get rid of it. The same with magnetic mattresses. I don't think you should be using those all the time. I think there's some kind of problem with that. Okay, what else do we have? Move your simple little things. Stop your computer and your TV use at least an hour before you go to bed. You'll read about this on the internet. This is very well documented and well known, although you may not know about it. And that is the type of emissions and light, especially light, from computer monitors and the television screen. Prevent the brain from producing the proper neurotransmitters that induce that relaxed state that helps us go to sleep. So you want to not be looking at a television screen or your computer screen or your little cell phone where you've got your lighted screen right before you go to bed. You want to, about an hour before you go to bed, you want to cut all that stuff off. No electronics, read a book, whatever. Just don't be using electronics, especially electronics that have a visual screen. Move your alarm clock. This is an age-old one. Dowsers have known this, and anyone who studies electrostress has known this for a long time. Alarm clocks, electronically operated electric alarm clocks that have the digital readouts have very, very strong, most of them have very, very strong electromagnetic fields. Now, this isn't radiant energy like radio frequencies. It's just go and go and go and go forever. This is just a field that's emitted as soon as you turn on the clock. But the problem is that the field very often, not always, you can use a Gauss meter to measure it, very often, but not always, you'll have a field that can be a good 3 feet out from the clock. Well, that's problematic because we use an alternate current electrical system. And so basically you've got electrical waves moving and flipping their polarity. I read an article, what was it? It was something like 9 billion times, or maybe it was more than that, but it was in the billions per second that the polarities being flipped in the electricity that is feeding your equipment. So that means every time the polarity is flipped, all electrical fields have a magnetic field perpendicular to the electrical field. And so you've got those magnetic fields. It's like having a magnet and going like this constantly. Well, we're a giant magnet. And so you have an alarm clock next to your head that's got a magnetic field that's going like this all night long, and it's 1 foot from your head, and it's jostling you ever so slightly all night long. So move the alarm clock across the room, or move it at least a minimum of 3 feet away from your head. You can douse that and see how far away you should move it. Or use a battery operated clock, but you still run into a little bit of a problem with alarm if they have a lighted panel, because we're going to talk about that also. You want to keep the room dark, dark, dark. If you want to sleep better, you want to get into that deep, healthy sleep and not kind of be sleeping with, one eye metaphorically open. You need to have all the lights off. It needs to be incredibly dark, or your system will not shut down. It will stay on some level of alert. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But move the alarm clock away, and lamps too, especially notorious are pole lamps. They have often throw very, very strong, amazingly strong fields they'll emit from the base of the lamp. And so make sure that the lamps are about 3 feet away from you too. Check your wall outlets. You can go to the not grocery store, what am I talking about? You can go to the hardware store. You can get a little device that's an outlet tester. They cost like $8. And you just plug it into your outlets, and it'll show you if the outlet is wired properly and grounded properly. You should probably worry about this in your entire house, but at the very least, what you want to do is check the outlets that are near your bed. Wall outlets and electricity running in wires through the walls should not be problematic, even for someone who's extremely electrosensitive like me, provided the wiring has been done correctly and everything's grounded effectively. So you want to check and make sure that's so. It's not a problem, in my opinion, putting your bed up against an electrical outlet, provided the outlet is grounded properly. So you can check all that and make sure that's okay. You also want to check on what's on the other side of the wall from wherever your bed is. There might be a microwave oven, like in your kitchen, and there might be microwave leakage out of the back of that oven. There might be your the transformer for the sprinkler. The little laundry room is next to your bedroom with your timing system for your drip system for your yard, and there's a little transformer in there that's projecting an electromagnetic field, 5-6 feet from the little black transformer. They usually have very strong fields, and you're sleeping on the other side of the wall, and you never even thought about it, but there's a major electrical field there. Don't have your bed up against circuit boxes. Don't have your bed up against transformers, wall transformers, or the plug-in transformers, because again, it puts you in a situation where you're in a fluctuating magnetic field. That's the problem, the magnetic field, and your body can never rest. It just can never rest. If you happen to be moving in a direction where you're going to build a house, I would recommend, if you ever find yourself in the next 10 years or 20 years or the end of your life in an opportune situation to build your own home, put in what are called demand switches. They're very popular in Europe, where you can actually turn off the electrical current that's making the circuit around the room. It's all tied to that one switch, and you can actually cut off all the electricity in the room at night. That would be the ideal situation, as a demand switch. So there you have that. Manage the radio frequencies, manage the basic electromagnetic fields coming off equipment. Keep yourself distanced from that, and manage electronics. Don't have electronics on, and certainly things that have screens that are lit right before you go to bed. Turn all that stuff off before you go to bed. It'll help still the mind, but more importantly, it will help your brain create the right neurotransmitters to put you to sleep, or to help your body put you to sleep. So that was a long one on that. How am I doing on time? Okay, we'll run a little overtime on this. Okay, this is an interesting one. Oh, did I skip the dark? Very dark? Yeah, I did. Okay, very, very dark. I already mentioned some of these things. You need to turn off all lights, even little teeny night lights. Cover the lit display I already talked about in your alarm clocks, and turn off any exterior lighting around your house, even subtle stuff, even like your, if there's a little bit of a glow from the night light, security lights that you have in your yard. You're going to be dead. Skip the security. Just sleep soundly. Don't worry about having your lights on all night long, or figure out some way to have the lights on and have no light interference in your bedroom. So if you can see the lights from your security system outside, even a reflective glow from ground lights, you need to put up the type of shades that will block all that out. So you can keep the lights if you want, but just block out all the light. And of course, you could use what I've shown you here in the picture. You could use a sleeping mask. That's a way, although I don't think that is foolproof. I had about 20 years ago now, I had a doctor do a number of tests on me, and one of the things he did is he tested my light sensitivity, and he could, with me blindfolded, he could walk towards me shining a flashlight, and I could tell where he was. Without being able to see the light, I could feel the light, and if he brought the light in too close to me, it would actually cause a pain reaction in my body, just hypersensitivity to light. And so anyway, that could be agitating to some people, even feeling it. So in my opinion, the masks are great, but even better is literally darken the room. Literally darken the room. In Sedona, Bill's saying, the guest room in my parents' house was extremely dark, no light at all, and it bothered me. I had to leave the door open partly to have a little light and sleep. What I would say with that, Bill, and if there's an example of if being in the dark, in the pitch dark, is bothersome to you, to where you get anxious. We know what that's all about. It's belief codes, right? So I'd clear the belief codes, but I certainly would sleep with a little light on until I managed to find those belief codes, because the anxiety that you have by the belief codes being perpetually agitated is going to be greater. The loss there is going to be greater than the gain you'd get turning off all the lights, and blah blah blah. So use common sense with that type of thing, and clear the belief codes. You should be able to sleep in a room without any light. Okay, manage water issues. This is another one that's kind of an unconventional thing, but can be hugely impacting on sleep. Don't place your bed against a wall. You need to go look at your house tonight. You need to look where the beds are configured, especially your bed. And make sure that it's not up against a wall that has pipes, water pipes on it, where water regularly runs through those pipes. The reason for that is that water and the pipes themselves are incredibly conductive subtle energy conduits. So all kinds of stuff can travel on literally the pipes, especially if they're metal pipes, and even plastic pipes, but they serve as incredible conduits. And if water is flowing, if water is constantly in those pipes, even if it's static, the water is has a great memory. It can hold psychic charge, it can hold subtle energy charges, noxious charges from the environment. It can have subtle energy charges from high frequency radiation piggyback on the energetic field, the ionic field of the flowing water. You need to stay away from flowing water, not because the water is problematic, but because it's so conductive and it can carry and is carrying today a lot of non-beneficial stuff of the subtle energy variety through your home. Eliminate, this has to do with noise. You want to we don't think it's that big of a deal to have a little faucet dripping, and you think you can't even really hear that. But it's amazing how much we actually do hear with our lower sensing and our higher sensing. And if you've got something that, like a toilet that is running regularly, or you have a pipe in the house that's got this running sound in it constantly, or a dripping faucet, and it's just ever so subtle, but you actually can hear it, that can disrupt your sleep patterns because it grabs a little bit of your attention. Part of you stays on alert. So fix it. Fix those little teeny things. Sprinklers, a common thing. Make sure to set your sprinklers so they don't wake you up in the morning. Set them after when you would like to wake up. I know people like to start their sprinklers at the crack of dawn or before, especially in Arizona, because we try to be so we try to conserve so much water, and there's merit to that, but not if it's waking you up every morning. So start an hour later or 2 hours later if it's actually waking you up every morning, and you don't want to be awakened at that time in the morning. If it's okay, if that's your normal wake-up time and you're using it like a natural alarm clock, fine. But if it's inappropriately waking you up, change the timing of the sprinklers. This is an interesting one. Drink 1 or 2 glasses of water before you go to bed to stay hydrated through the night. People are going to say, well, gosh, won't that make you have to get up at night and pee? And the answer is no, it won't. Healthy people who are in halfway decent shape, should be able to, you want to hydrate yourself before you go to bed, because you're going to go 6 to 8 hours without any water, and it's going to cause a dehydration effect in the body. All the fluids in your system concentrate at night, including your urine. So most people can go easily through 6 to 8 hours sleeping without having to go to the bathroom. If you cannot go 6 to 8 hours sleeping straight without being awakened to have to go to the bathroom, that is called, I wrote down the name of exactly what that is called. Oh, nocturia is the formal name of that. And that's a problem. It's actually a medical condition that you shouldn't have. Now, you can take things like saw palmetto, which is an herb. There are many, many different herbs you can read about and get information on from an herbalist, from a Chinese medicine doctor, whatever, herbal specialist, read about it yourself. But the reality is you want to pay close attention to that. Again, it's a symptom thing. If you're damping down symptoms with herbs and things like that, take the herbs, and if the symptoms go away, or the homeopathic remedy, whatever, and the symptoms go away and they don't return, fine. But if you are needing to take some kind of herbal remedy or prescription remedy or something to prevent you from getting up every night, awakening to have to go to the bathroom, having to urinate, that is usually indicative of some much more serious problem developing or already developed, like diabetes, prostate trouble, can be cancer developing. You don't want to. We spend way too much time in our put a patch on it, we don't want to feel any pain society. Pain is important because it alerts. We don't want to feel any pain. It would be ideal if we didn't feel it, if we were always comfortable all the time. But pain was designed to alert us to problems, that if you mask the pain and to where it's kind of like antidepressants. You mask the emotional pain, and you don't deal with what's really going on. You mask the physical pain. You could end up with a very, very serious disease that you're not going to be able to easily recover from, or it's going to cost you a fortune to recover from. Downtime energetically, financially, all that kind of stuff. So again, use these natural remedies. It's all fine if it works and you don't have to keep on doing it. But if you have to keep on doing it, you need to go see a doctor and you need to find out what's going on. Why are you having to get up every night, once or twice a night, and urinate? You shouldn't be having to do that. Healthy people don't need to do that. So figure out what's going on. And that, mind you, is when you're drinking a couple of glasses of water before you go to bed. One of the first things that people who have trouble making it through the night without peeing do is they cut down on their fluid intake before they go to bed. And that may be part of the plan to slightly cut down on the fluid intake. But when you cut down on the fluid intake, you set the stage for the body excessively dehydrating over the night. You all know how it is when you wake up in the morning. You're slightly dehydrated, even if you drink water before you go to bed. So we do want to be well hydrated. And you can go on and read lots of articles on that have been published of the importance of being hydrated while you're sleeping. Okay, what else we got? Okay, let's see if I can get my little thing to move here. Okay, next one. This is, of course, very important. Manage. Now, you may not be able to do this in 5 or 10 minutes a night, but overall, you want to manage your mental and your emotional and your energetic state. And key things that I do. And it's a matter of discipline for me, just because I choose to live a lifestyle like this, is that I refuse to go to bed with active emotional issues. I don't want active negative emotion in my system when I'm trying to rest. And in fact, you will not rest soundly if you've got active emotional issues. You might with sleeping pills or taking a nightcap, you might. But if you've got active emotional issues and you are not masking those in any way, you're probably numbing yourself out. You're probably going to have a bit of a restless night. You're not going to sleep as well as you could. So clear large emotional charge. Now, what's a fast track to doing that? You don't have to necessarily clear belief codes. That would be wonderful, but that could take a long time. So don't bother with that. Do a simple thing like do the rose technique. Do I have any active emotional energy or acquired energy, yours or acquired from other people, active and highly active and on the surface in my energy system? If the answer is yes, can I clear that quickly with roses and just do the rose technique where you ask different roses to appear and combust that energy for you? If you don't know that technique, take that program, 5 incredibly easy ways to combust negative emotional energy. You can do it in seconds. It doesn't take that long, but it does take attention to it. And sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes you've got some kind of gnarly thing that's awakened that the little rose technique is not going to take that all away, and sometimes you're just going to be too tired and you're going to plunk out, whatever. But I would recommend you get into a habit, kind of like brushing your teeth, that you're going to clear off as much emotional sludge as you can, if there is any, by investing 5 or 10 minutes a night before you conk off to sleep. And you'll be all the better for it. Not only it'll help you in every category of your life, but our topic tonight, it will help you sleep better. Call upon another great one is Joey Korn's technique. Those of you who have if you've never read Joey's book on his working with the I don't know if he still calls them the powers of nature, but I'm going to call them that because that's what I call them, the intelligences of nature. And years ago, Joey discovered that when we sleep and we're in that static position for an extended time, we leave an imprint of he calls it a bed pattern. It's basically a model of the tree of life we all have around us, these light centers that basically create the diagram of the tree of life. When you've got a lot of active belief codes and emotional energy, even if it's not active right in that very second, but activates, was active yesterday, activates when you knock off to sleep and you're not distracted, etc., what'll happen is it'll create a type of cloudy and he calls opaque nature to these what should be brilliant light fields that we have around us, and that will always show up right around the bed. They're very dowsable. Read his book and you'll read all about it. But you can do a simple technique. It takes less than 3 minutes. Call upon the powers of nature to come in and ask if there's any cloudy, first douse, are there any cloudy or opaque light centers in the bed pattern around my bed? If you sleep with someone, there's going to be 2 bed patterns intersecting with each other. Are there any cloudy or opaque light centers in the bed pattern around the bed? The clear parts of the tree of life pattern around you will be there too. They just won't be detectable because they don't have anything sticky in them. But are there any cloudy or opaque light centers in the bed pattern around my bed? If there are, call upon the powers of nature to please come in and transform all detrimental energies associated with that bed pattern and fill those light centers, anything that's not perfect, with love and light. And it will clear out that bed pattern. Now, this is a temporary thing. It doesn't necessarily clear your emotional issues. It certainly doesn't clear the belief codes. But it will clear the bed pattern, and you won't be sleeping there in a pile of psychic goo, your own psychic goo. And it can help discharge the emotional energy, especially if you do it every night. If they're very, very light emotional issues that you have, it can actually clear the light emotional issues one time. But if you do it night after night after night, it can actually help you discharge negative emotional energy, combust it. Nature will do that for you. So that would be another quickie. Do a quick aura check. I always check my aura before I go to bed, because I find if I go to bed and I've got big rips in my aura, that I'll wake up and I'll have spirits attached to me. So that might not happen to everyone, but you become more susceptible to that. You become more susceptible to interfacing with the astral plane when you're sleeping, all that type of thing. So do a quick aura check and a quick spirit unit check before you go to bed and patch yourself up. Write out, this is one I've done for years, write out your to-do list for tomorrow before bedtime, way before bedtime, and just keep on adding to that if you need to before bedtime. And if you lay down to go to sleep and something comes up that you think, oh, I got to do that tomorrow, go ahead and get out of bed and write it down. Because if you don't get out of bed and write it down, then you're going to dwell on it and it'll make you restless. You'll try to remember it through the sleep process, and that will keep you on some degree of alert instead of going into that deep sleep that you want to go into. So write down so that you're not thinking. Delegate to a piece of paper all your tasks for tomorrow rather than holding them in yourself, and just kind of let that go. The paper's going to hold all that memory for you, so you don't need to be remembering it. Everything's written down and you can sleep peacefully. A little trick that works really, really well. To still your mind, especially if you've got, like I've got this incredibly active mind. It's active up until, I do something to turn it down. My mind never gets tired, ever. And my body might get physically fatigued, but my mind never gets tired. And I can think. And so I need to do things to still myself. And one of the things that works really well is alternate nostril breathing. Just, doing, you know how to do it, the alternate nostril breathing, just to calm down. Another thing I do at night, I don't have it on here, but one of the things I do is I will watch of course this breaks the rule about the television thing, but I usually stay up at least, a good half hour to 45 minutes past this point, that when I turn the TV off. But I'll watch a brainless video that I might have even seen 20 times, and I'll just watch part of it or all of it, and that stills my mind, where I don't have to do any significant thinking. It's almost like somebody else is doing all the thinking and I'm just observing, and it stills my mind. And the only problem again with that strategy is that the light thing is that if you don't allot enough time between the point you turn the screen off, the video screen off, then you could screw up that neurotransmitter thing. I've never actually really had that problem. I get more gain soothing from the video thing. I also noticed that if I watch something in black and white, like old Perry Mason films, anything in black and white, it's very, very soothing. It'll soothe my mind very, very quickly. So you might try something like that. Collect black and white video, black and white DVDs, like the old Perry Mason stuff. And that's like no-brainer. The plots are so easy and, all that type of thing. You barely have to think. Do alternate nostril breathing, I said. Meditation would be another one that will still the mind. And a beautiful one is listen to that Mother Divine CD or other very relaxing music. But the Mother Divine CD gives you two hits for one. And that is you get not only the soothing, relaxing effect of just the sound of the music, but that CD, I am convinced, balances auras, that Sanskrit chanting. So do Sanskrit chanting or toning would be another thing you could put on the list. Is a very easy way to still the mind. I do that sometimes, toning. But listening to that particular CD would be very, very helpful. So those are just some ideas. You can come up with others. Manage geopathic energies and noise. I already mentioned noise in the form of drips, but there might be other noise in the space. So you want to, this is a big topic. It's certainly something that I can't teach you tonight. I can just tell you, you need to manage geopathic energies in your space. Those are, you need to manage the man-made stuff, the energetics. You need to manage the earth-based stuff or the cosmically generated stuff, but mainly the earth-based stuff. Probably the most problematic from a sleep standpoint is this condition called negatively charged grid pathways. And that's where they're all over. There are these energetic pathways all over your space. And they can pick up a charge, like 2 blocks away. There can be a house with some activity going on in that house. It could be electromagnetic. It could be emotional. It could be a break in the spirit unit in the house, and there's a psychic cesspool developing there, a negative vortex, but it's got a negative charge. And on the other side of your house, or God forbid in your house, there is a spirit unit break that has collected some of the same energy. And they create kind of like beacons like this, and eventually there's enough charge, and a charge traverses and connects one point to the other on the grid system. And that's called a negatively charged grid pathway. I talk of them like they're lines, but they're actually waves that move through the environment. But long and the short of it is, if you are in the path of that, it can be very, very toxic. So you can, very hard on the body, and it can definitely disrupt sleep. And it's probably one of the more common things that I find that disrupts sleep, especially when you have point A and point B. Very often, you are point B. And so that's where we go back to, if you will just simply keep your emotional energy clear, and if you will simply keep your aura in good shape, you're less likely to be point B, where you activate and pull a charge across the grid system that connects with you. Very often a human is the terminus point in that activity on the grid. So keep yourself clear. But you can take a dowsing rod. You can douse around your space and see if you can find any negatively charged grid pathways. They usually have a direction of flow. Sometimes it's multi-directional. There's many, many different ways and appropriate ways to treat the grid pathways. It depends on what the frequencies are that are on the pathways. You have to find an antidote that is a compensating frequency to basically collapse whatever's coming in there. That could be a stone, it could be a color. It's a big topic. I will probably teach a class on, I haven't taught one in a long time, and I'll probably teach a class on dealing with geopathic energies, common geopathic stress situations. I might try to squeeze it in before the end of this month, but in all likelihood I'll squeeze it into the month of March. So watch for that, and there's where you could get a little training on that. If you want to get some, if you suspect that, I've got that problem now and I'd like to jump and get on board with that now, you can call upon the powers of nature and see if the powers of nature can clear the charge on the grid pathways for you. At the very least, you can often get a temporary fix with that. Many times, because the root hasn't been resolved and there's no anchor in the environment to hold the compensating frequencies that the nature spirits have brought in, very often the problem will redevelop. But you can buy some time. And the other thing you can do is you can go to the American Society of Dowsers bookstore online, and you can see what kind of stuff they have these days on treating noxious energies. There's all kinds of books that have been written on the subject. But I will teach a class on that at some point, because I have a vast background in that, and I haven't taught a class in a while on that. What else do I have? Let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. Many of you know how to do you've been around long enough, you know how to do a basic correction on the spirit unit. If any of you who took my aura repair class, where I teach you how to do aura repair, and I think in there, or it might be the Stop the Aging process class, where I teach you how to do the repair of the spirit unit. The way you repair a human spirit unit, you can use the same techniques to repair an environmental spirit unit. So go to that material, and you use intention basically in most cases, to clear the space. Eliminate or counterbalance blatant noise problems. I mean, where it's apparent that you've got a barking dog outside, and it's chronic. You need to go talk to your neighbor. You need to try to resolve that problem if it's keeping you awake. You can try white noise things, but ultimately you want to try to solve the problem. You also want to listen for chronic subtle noises. Here's an interesting example. I had one student, I don't think she's on tonight. She's a Sensor Fitness Club member. She's not on tonight. But she had from 1 month to the next, she had a collapse of the EM field from her heart. She had the energetic function of her heart field collapsed. And the number one problem that had led to that was the noise was the sound, the chronic, subtle sound of a ball bearing in a heating system that was somehow going bad or whatever. It needed to be replaced. And it was just making this ever so slight irritating sound. Barely, I mean, you would have to attend to it consciously, but her subconscious was attending to it constantly, and it was irritating. And the emotional response of chronic irritation collapsed her heart field. So, and then that led to a whole slew of other problems. So, spend some quiet time just in the environment and listen to the sounds. I used to do this when I was in the sales and management training. I worked very, very heavily with the housing industry, with large apartment community developments, and these were big fancy places, and they'd have these beautiful model apartments, and one of the things in my training that I would teach people how to do is how to really work from a positive angle, emotional responses. Emotion is what is the key to successful sales. I mean, it's so critically important. And so we'd evaluate every single aspect of the emotional stimulus in the sales environment, from the people, how they stimulated the customers, to like their model apartments. We'd go in and we'd stand in the model apartment, and we'd do things like we'd do a visual review of the entire apartment and how that stimulated us. We would do an auditory review where we'd stand there and we'd be very, very quiet, and we'd move through the apartment and we'd listen for any kind of sound that might create a negative emotional response. Like you're going up the elevator to get to the apartment and the elevator squeaks. Well, that's going to create fear of death, which is not a buying emotion. So you need to get the elevator fixed and all those types of things. So you want to do that same type of exercise in your own environment. Are there any chronic, once in a while noises are no big deal. Are there any chronic little noises like a squeaky fan or a running refrigerator that you actually can hear when you're really, really quiet? You need to fix those. You need to try to eliminate those noises. They will influence to some degree. Again, it's probably not going to send you to the death state 5 years earlier. But it might, if you want to have the most sound sleep possible, you want to do all these things. That one is probably one that would be a little bit lower on the priority list, but maybe not. Look what happened to that one gal with that ball bearing. That was an example. That heart field stays down for too long, and all kinds of gnarly things can happen after the fact. Okay, if you sleep with, wear earplugs, unless, now this reminds me of what Bill said, how he would get afraid in the dark. Wear earplugs if there is a noise problem is another angle, another way to solve the problem, one of the options. Unless doing that, I can't do that. I don't like to have every single speck of sound. And it's not so much, I don't mind every single speck of sound being knocked out. I like silence. But I like to know that I can hear a sound if there is a sound that I need to hear. So I don't like earplugs. I don't like sleeping with them. I can't get comfortable with them. So, but you might be able to get comfortable with them, and that would be a way to knock out. But it's like Bill and the light thing. If you sleep with someone who snores, and it does disrupt your sleep, you need to insist that problem gets handled, or you need to sleep in a different room where you can't hear the snoring, one or the other. Don't let someone else's snoring completely disrupt your well-being. I know that can be really challenging, especially in marriage situations where it's just it's almost like a given that you got to sleep with your husband. But man, if you can't sleep, you're going to be a cranky wife, or vice versa. It could be the wife that snores. You're going to be cranky. You're not going to be a great partner. You're going to resent every time you got to climb into bed. That's going to affect the sex life. I mean, everything. It's just this downhill spiral. Fix the snoring problem, or do an alternate approach where you have your own room and you don't have to listen to the snoring. If you snore and it wakes you up, you need to fix that problem. Again, you don't want stuff that's knocking you out and preventing you from getting into deep REM sleep. So those are just some suggestions. Other considerations, just wrapping it up here. Fresh air. This is something that's more common. Lack of fresh air is more common in our modern society because we build these super tight buildings, where there's not even a little draft. And you want to have plenty of fresh air circulating in the bedroom. Crack a window, and try to get fresh air. If you can't, or at the very least in the daytime, open the door of the apartment or whatever long enough to let fresh air circulate through the house. Turn your fan on. You should have an intake, an outtake, where it circulates the air in the house. Make sure that you do that. But do try to get fresh air into the house. Try to find the best sleeping direction for you. Sometimes people don't sleep well just because, again, this is a subtle energy thing with human magnetics. They're not properly aligned with the various currents on the earth, and some people sleep better with their head in different directions, like north, south, east, or west. There's not one direction that is perfect for everybody. So if you're having trouble sleeping, try just shifting your position. It could be that you're not properly harmonizing based on your particular energetic system and body with the currents, and so shift yourself around and see if there is a position that you would sleep better in consistently if you face, let's say, east, and give that a try. Try changing your sleeping position entirely, where you just not just where you face your head, but where every night or every other night you literally rotate your body. I do this. This is one of my remedies for not going into such alignment and such harmonization with all the energies in the environment, like radio waves and things like that. If I'll just shift myself around, where I sleep one way one night, the next night, and maybe in a single night I might even shift myself in a couple of different directions, but mainly I do it day by day, as I just shift myself in all different directions, and that seems to really help. I don't become such a good antenna if I do that. It's like my body can't remember. It takes a while to figure out that the same energies are in the environment. So you could try that. Sleep in various rooms. You might have some energetic compatibility with certain areas, or you might have energetic problems like geopathic energies, noxious energies, or human energies in a particular room, but yet they're not in another room. And ideally you would find out what is it going on in that room that you'd like to sleep in that prevents you from comfortably sleeping in there, and try to solve it. But I have encountered spaces where the problem's not solvable, and yet it is solvable in the big picture because you could just sleep in a different room. So do that, and use that other room where you don't sleep well for something short term, where you're not in there 8 hours straight, that type of thing. let's see, if you sleep with someone else and you don't sleep well with that person, again, this can be challenging, but for the relationship, especially if people have really strong belief codes that you've got to sleep together, but try sleeping in a different bed or a different room. This becomes especially valuable when somebody's sick or somebody is emotionally upset. They're tense, they're worried, they're angry. When you sleep side by side with someone, you're like two antennae, and I guarantee you get imprints. And I don't know. I like my own sleeping space, but then I'm more sensitive than most. But if you're not sleeping well and you're sleep deprived and you're getting, again, crankier and crankier and crankier, and you're catching more and more colds and blah, 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 you might just try sleeping in a separate room and see if maybe the sleep disturbance is the psychic energies, emotional energies of your partner. It can be physical incompatibility. I've found that too, being highly, highly physically compatible with some people and highly not physically compatible with other people, to the point where I could not sleep next to them. So you can do experiments like that. That's one of the harder ones because everybody's egos get involved, but you need to value your own health, and if it's deteriorating your health, you need to think seriously about not sleeping in there. If you trace it to it's the partner, you're just not compatible with that energy field. Clear belief codes that have attracted the circumstances, even the partner, with the incompatible energy field. What are the belief codes that have attracted this situation into your life? Ultimately, that you would want to clear those belief codes. It may not solve the problem with the partner, but it might lead to a different partner that you are compatible with. So why have you attracted these energetic incompatibilities? Keep on chipping away at the belief codes. There can be many. I can testify to that. I'm still chipping away at belief codes that attract sensitivity issues in my own life. But if you're not sleeping well and you know how to do belief code work, one of the strategies is, okay, here's the things. I keep on attracting these different circumstances that are making it difficult for me to sleep, or I can't even figure out why I'm not sleeping. I've done all these things that are on the list. I've read other mainstream stuff on mundane things you can treat to sleep better. I'm still not sleeping better. You need to tackle belief code work and try to get the belief codes out of the way that are disturbing your sleep. That's probably the hardest thing out of anything that I've talked about tonight, but it can be done. You need to pay attention to your diet. Sometimes food, and you can douse. Is my diet, my standard diet, either food, beverages, maybe vitamins or different things, herbs that I'm taking, is there anything that I'm putting in my mouth that is having an effect on my sleep, disturbing my sleep, or the quality of the sleep? And if you get yes, then you're going to have to do a dowsing, or just logical interrogation of your own eating patterns, drinking patterns, and try to figure it out until you douse out what it is that is actually causing the problem. Then you need to experiment. You need to eliminate that from the diet and see if you can get proof that was playing a role because you're sleeping better. That would be evidence that you have figured it out correctly. Lastly, I'm just going to mention, and then we'll conclude this tonight, star stuff. This is new on the plate. Not that new, 9 years, certainly that it's been affecting me, but in the last several years, these star surges, there's no buts about it. When a star surge, if it comes in at night, it can definitely wake me up. And solar flare activity can affect the planetary magnetic fields, the atmospheric fields. It can load the atmosphere with excessive electrical charge. Some people would be more sensitive to that than others, but it might result in not being able to sleep as easily. And of course, the magnetic field fluctuations that are occurring because of solar activity, but now because of this mantle thing that I keep on telling you about, where the mantle is very disturbed on the planet, that can definitely distress sleep patterns, mainly with aches and pain levels will escalate tremendously, and it's for me at least, and some of you I'm sure would mimic this because I know enough about enough of you that I know you get similar symptoms. The pain is what wakes you up. And people can hardly imagine that don't feel this, but it's truly like every cell in your body is being flipped over. It hurts, and enough to wake you up. So what do you do about it? Well, go back through and watch that video, Writing the Stars, and make sure that you get the alerts from me when we've got a star surge, or when that there's magnetic stuff going on because I report it, or we've got a solar flare coming in. Why? Because you're on the NASA mailing list and you get the alerts that there are solar flares coming in. Pay attention to this stuff. If this stuff is coming in, if you're not feeling great, check. Is there any solar flare activity? What's going on? Send me an email. Are we in the middle of a star surge? And I may not write volumes about it, but I can certainly plunk back if you're a club member, yes, or I think we're about to start one, or I think we're headed that way, and you'll at least know that you need to do something. When you've got the aches and pains, you want to, when it's the pain thing, it means magnetic fluctuations. And what you really want to do is you want to hold an intention that you want to disconnect your system, your sensing system, from whatever is going on the planet. You have strong planetary affiliations. I have been in more than one of my experiences, I have been in the form of a planet. So I very easily misinterpret myself at a subconscious level as the Earth itself. And so I feel a lot of this stuff. That's why I have that weirdness with my calyx. I've told you guys that about how my calyx move across my head. My system, no matter how many times I tell it I am not the Earth itself, just keeps on reverting to I'm the Earth, I'm the Earth, I'm the Earth, and I'm not. But you may have something similar to that. You may have a vast background where you've been in a planet form, and you may have an especially hard time with these magnetic fluctuations, where the Earth itself is cracking underneath our very feet, basically. For that, you want to, the biggest impact when there are the magnetic field fluctuations is polarity shifting, clear down to the cellular level. So one is try to, with intention, disconnect yourself from it so that you won't go into a resonance with what's happening with the magnetics. The second thing you want to do is alternate nostril breathing. Listening to the Mother Divine tape can be good, but alternate nostril breathing is probably your most expedient remedy because you're experiencing polarity shifting, and you're experiencing it on a massive level, and that's why it hurts so much, on a cellular level, and that's why it hurts so much. The other thing that can be going on is a complete disruption of something called your subtle organizing energy fields, and that's kind of like the screen, ultimately the screen that you're showing up on, and you can think of it kind of like the paint by number pictures where all the little dots are supposed to be in a certain order, and that order is what we would call you, and they get jumbled up. Blue gets in the spot where yellow should go. That subtle organizing energy field gets disorganized. So you can use your intention and just hold your intention. A lot of times it's helpful to use a pendulum. I started years ago using Walt Wood's chart, where I would just take a reading on the condition of my subtle organizing energy fields, and then I'd get it's -10, and I'd run a correction program on myself to organize my fields, to restore them to right and perfect organization, organize my fields to right and perfect order now, to a +10 on that chart, and I'd just spin the pendulum. I'd let it go, and I would feel my entire field, just like a big machine, just totally reorganize itself. I mean, you can physically feel this happening to you, and it'll reorganize itself, and you feel great. And that may not hold for ever. You might have to do it again. But it's very, very effective. So when it's magnetic stuff and the symptoms are pain, those would be your best remedies. When it's the charge in the atmosphere, you wake up, your brain is burning, your eyes are burning, your mind is firing like a rocket. That's either solar flare activity coming in, highly charged atmosphere, or we're starting into a star surge. And again, I've done several seminars on this. The most recent is that Writing the Stars, and you need to just review that information and know the different remedies and quickly douse out for yourself what do you need to do. I've had times where I wake up in the middle of the night, a star surge is starting, and man, I would just really love to lay there, but you know what? I will just get worse and worse and worse. I need to get up and drink some cayenne tea. I have my little cayenne tea. I feel perfectly fine. I go back and I sleep soundly, have a wonderful night. So again, one little step, preventive step, or step to soothe your system, or to set your system up to ride the star waves smoothly, can go a long way. One little thing like drinking a cup of cayenne tea, or taking a swig of iodine, or dosing yourself with yarrow, or whatever it is that you need to do. But you need to basically memorize those strategies, or have your dowsing chart from the printouts that I've given you readily available, so you can just really quickly douse it. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. I think that's pretty much it. The star stuff is the most recent thing on the scene that disrupts sleep patterns. We're living in challenging times from a sleep standpoint, as evidenced by 40% of the Americans and 30% of the Brits or more reporting, taking drugs and reporting severe sleep problems. So in all likelihood, some of you fall into that category, not necessarily that you're taking drugs, but that I suspect that statistically, some of you would be experiencing sleep disorders or sleep disruption. And these are just some of my best ideas on what you can do about that. Go on to as a close, go onto the internet and again, read some of the other mundane things, because those are useful too. These are just some of the things that are more subtle energy oriented that you're not going to read about on the internet. So most of these. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any other questions, send them to me now. Otherwise, I'm signing off.